Put down that camera and strap in. It's time for a new episode of TogChat Live. It's an open mic night for photographers. Get ready for 60 minutes of your photography questions in real time with answers from your host, Joe Edelman.
Hey gang, happy Monday evening. How's everybody doing? This is another live episode of TogChat, and I'm your host, Joe Edelman. We've got 60 minutes of questions and answers. I'm going to do my best to help you guys with the answers to the questions that you have left. And we've got a bunch of really, really good ones already. So if you've got questions, things that you would like me to talk about, type them in that chat window. I will do my best to get to all of them during the show tonight. So let's get all the business stuff out of the way. First of all, the important business. You guys, a lot of great people here. Dave's here. In fact, Dave just got here tonight. I haven't seen him for a while. Robert, Melnick Studios, Nate Man, Christopher, Doreen's here. I know Brent Draft's here. James Barker, Mamaya Press is here. Ron from James from New Jersey. Ron Bartash is here too. Ron, I think you're from New Jersey too, right? Kevin, Cassandra, Steve. Hey, all you guys. Sven's here. Sven's been camping out. Sven camps out like 3 hours before every show. He's in the chat room like typing away. So listen, as always, gang, I appreciate you guys spending a Monday evening here with me. A lot of stuff to talk about. New video out this week. I was going to open up with that. There's a whole bunch of stuff that I want to say, but you know what? I'm not gonna. I'm sure the question will come up and we'll talk about it. It's sitting right that way, right there. There it is. Okay. Anyway, we'll get into that later. So don't worry. It's the elephant in the room, and we will address the elephant. But in the meantime, hey, let's get into some of the important stuff for tonight. So the quick business guys, do me a favor, hit the thumbs up. And you know what? For that matter, if you're a Palsy Buff user and you just think that I suck, go ahead and hit thumbs down. I hate to tell you, the thumbs down works just as good as the thumbs up as far as helping a YouTuber. So go for it, whichever works. But you know, I'd appreciate the thumbs up, okay? And of course, if you haven't done it yet, please subscribe. I am less than 300 subscribers away from that 100,000 mark, which is a really cool thing. And I have you guys to thank for that. And of course, social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. For those of you that don't follow me on Twitter, you're missing out. I've been doing something new on Twitter and people seem to really like it. And that is when I post a picture, if you swipe right, I'm including the lighting diagrams and the gear list for the stuff that went into the shot. So they're like little mini lessons, lighting lessons that I'm teaching on Instagram. And today on Instagram, I posted my first images, and I'll get to Facebook and Twitter with them later tonight, but I posted my first images from my new Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II and the brand new, like it just came out last week, 45mm f1.2 Pro lens with the feathered bokeh. For those of you that are bokeh fanatics, this lens does what everybody says you can't do with Micro Four Thirds. It creates just gorgeous, beautiful, creamy, as Olympus calls it, feathered bokeh in the background. And it's awesome. It really, really is. So posted the first couple of shots from that. Again, there'll be more stuff on Facebook and Twitter for that as well. And I'll have a video coming out soon to talk about that lens and my migration to Olympus. And of course, comments, gang, are always welcome and appreciated along the way. Okay? So, you know what? I'm going to switch right over. Let's get into this. We'll take care of some of the other business later. So we had some really good questions tonight. So for those of you that don't know, even though the show starts at 6:30 p.m. my time here in Allentown, Pennsylvania, things actually get rolling around 5:30 p.m. my time here in Allentown because that's when I start setting up, getting all the stuff set up on the screens that I need to be able to run the software and do the show and have my notes and all that. And that's when I turn the chat window on, and that's when people come in and start talking, asking a lot of questions. So we start loading those questions up pretty early in here. Okay, so don't worry, Ian, I'll explain the whole Palsy Buff honeybee or honey badger thing in a minute. Don't worry. Okay, so first question we had tonight is actually one that is left over from last week, but the gentleman that asked it is one of my Patreons on Patreon. So I wanted to make sure that I got to this because it didn't come up during our Patreon chat. And for those of you, if you are not aware of what Patreon is or you haven't ever seen my Patreon, check it out. It's patreon.com/Joe Edelman. The link is in the description below the video. I'm not going to give you a hard sales pitch. If you're so moved, your support would be greatly appreciated, but don't think that by any means it's something that I expect from you or that you are obligated to do or otherwise. Okay. So the question is, where Jean is from, which I believe he's actually in South America, if I'm not mistaken. There's a big photo studio chain called the Picture People, which we also have here in the U.S. In his country, they are offering photo shoots for, I'm going to say $35 because I'm not sure what the currency is there. But price-wise, it is very difficult for him to compete with that. So his question is, any suggestions for what he can tell clients to basically convince them to consider him instead of going to the Picture People? So here is my feedback, Jean, and it's not really the feedback you're looking for, but it's very sincere feedback. The response is you don't tell those people anything because those people are not your customers. So what you have to understand is that those people that will go to places like Picture People or even, back in the day, like a JCPenney photo studio or Owen Mills or any of those, okay, even the Kmart photo studio. These were people that were looking for a bargain for whatever the reason. Let's be fair. Some people can't afford an expensive photographer. Now, just because somebody, you guys hear me talk about this with weddings a lot, it's not fair to say that, those photographers that shoot weddings for $500 should be like banned from being photographers. That's not fair. That's actually incredibly arrogant. We all understand that those photographers that shoot weddings for $500 are not going to pay their bills. They're never going to become full-time pros, not at that rate. It's not possible. But the fact of the matter is there are people that simply can't afford more than $500 for pictures. And yes, there are people that are just cheap and not discerning of quality, but we're going to leave that out of the mix. They get what they deserve, right? But there are people that can't afford that $500. So, to say that no photographer should be allowed to charge that price is really unfair because that's saying that, well, too bad. There are people that just shouldn't be allowed to have photos of the most important day of their lives. So it's a similar philosophy that I carry over when we start talking about portraits. There are always going to be people that have a need. If they want to have pictures, which let's face it, folks, that's a luxury, right? That's not, something that everybody needs. It's a luxury. So if they want pictures and they want that luxury, they're going to go to a place that's inexpensive. Now, we also all know that if you go to a place like Picture People, they are going to pressure the bejesus out of you after they've taken your pictures to try and sell stuff. But if you're a person that doesn't have the finances and you have no money, well, you can't get blood from a rock, right? So the upside is you're going to get a couple pictures, which is what you planned, and you're only going to pay this $35 or 35 pounds, whatever it is. So really, John, the answer is you've got to work to create images that people will see the value in, and then find the people that are willing to spend that money. So for instance, now, again, I know you're not in the U.S., Sean, but like a lot of photographers, rookie photographers in the U.S., the mistake they make is that they get their first website together. They go to Wix and they build a simple website. Oh, that's fine, whatever. And then they go to Craigslist, or they're on Facebook, and every 2 days or every day they're posting a picture like, hey, hire me, $25, I'll do your portrait session. Well, first of all, that's shouting. Secondly, they're really not going to get anybody that's serious because they're actually just making themselves look bad. And those same people are usually posting junk pictures. They're just not very good quality. So step one, work to develop a talent and a skill set that sets you apart from everybody else. Then two, you need to find the people that are interested in what you do. Once you've found people that are interested in what you do, it is much easier to name your price and have people pay that price because what you've done is you've created a desire, not a need. Don't ever think that people need you. They don't. You have to make people want you. That's a very, very important part of this process. I find so many photographers get into a position where they're starting their business and it's almost like they feel entitled somehow. No, nobody needs you at all. There are no shortage of photographers. There's no shortage of people with cameras. And there is nothing about life that demands you must have a photographer for this. Nothing. We're not talking about the logic behind having, your cousin who just got a new camera 3 days ago shoot your wedding. We're not talking about the logic or sensibilities here. We're talking about simply, is it a requirement? Of course, it's not a requirement. So, but honestly, John, that's where you start. Then I'm going to send you back to my video, and my channel. There are 4 videos, and you want to watch all 4 of them. They're the marketing videos. So when you go back to the video, click on the link, click on the little magnifying glass up at the top of the screen. In fact, here, we'll do this together so that you guys can see what I'm talking about. Let me get back to my channel screen here. My apologies. And we'll show you. Whoop, there we go. Okay. So let's flip this over. So, Jean, when you go to the channel, click on the little magnifying glass up in the upper right. Okay. And just type in marketing. Okay. Or if you don't want to do that, click on the playlist link up here, and that'll take you to the playlist, and there's a marketing playlist. But once you get here, there it is right there. Marketing for Photographers. Watch that series. In the first 2 videos, which are Social Media for Photographers Part 1 and Part 2, I actually discuss a little bit of that, how you kind of build that interest and get people interested in what you're doing. So that's where I would start, because literally, to answer your question in detail, I could probably spend about the next 3 hours in that. But Jean, since I know you're one of my patrons, if you have some things maybe a little bit more specific, or if you're still kind of struggling with the concepts, make sure that you bring that up on Friday during our Patreon Zoom chats. Okay? All right. So Dave Dundas, the dreaded marketing videos. Yes, those. The ones that are not sexy. They don't have any gear. They're kind of, but yeah, you need them. Okay. All right. So Carl Haar had another great question. This was actually kind of cool because now, and this is one of those questions that brings out lots of opinions. I'll forewarn you. But I'm going to go pretty lazy, or I shouldn't say lazy. I'm going to go pretty light on the opinion aspect and try to be practical. So hopefully you guys will go along with that. Okay. So his question is, when he was taught to use lights, he was told that if your photo looks like it was lit, that you failed at lighting. It should look as natural as it can. Is this still the thought? Carl, that actually is an awesome question. And at the same time, it's a question you should never ask. So, given your context, it's fair for you to ask it. Somebody taught you, hey, this is how it has to be, right? So the person that taught you that was doing one of 2 things. They were either one of those photographers that subscribes to the idea that there are rules for everything, which you guys know how I feel about that, or they were simply one of the photographers that teaches the idea that my way is the right way and it's the only way. Okay, so since they feel that way, that's what you're supposed to do. Look, I think that especially in today's world, in terms of what's popular. So I want to kind of get to really what the intent of your question was, which the way I read your question is more of like, hey, is this the trend today? Is this what people are expecting? And my answer would be, that is no longer the thought at all. And if it is, I guess one of the first things that'd be worth saying, well, then my photography sucks pretty bad, because I have a lot of shots that look like they were lit for sure. And then, I have shots that don't look like there was any lighting involved, when in fact there was actually a ton of lighting involved. So, I think at the end of the day, it's a matter of, number one, first and foremost, and remember, guys, try and keep it in this perspective. The answer is, what do you enjoy? Right? Not what does some dude on YouTube say, not what does your client say, not what does your spouse say, definitely not what some other guy in the local camera club says or anything like that. And here's why. And I've talked about this actually from the business perspective before. If you try to do things because somebody says you have to do it, come on, really? Like, have not, none of us ever been in that situation where we've had to do something, and because we have to do it, we're miserable, right? So it all starts with doing what you enjoy doing. So if you like stuff that has, a lot of obvious, lighting involved, I'm sorry, I'll admit, Nate Man, I got to be honest with you, that's deep, dude. Nate Man typed in here, technically all photos have to look like they were lit or else you couldn't see anything. Technically, Nate, you're right. Sorry, Carl. That one caught me. Anyway, listen. You got to start with what do you enjoy? What do you have fun doing? And then from there, you've got to look at things from the standpoint, objectively or subjectively. Is it attractive? Does it look good? So I guess my biggest pushback on your question, Carl, is don't let someone else define your work. You guys, and Carl, I know you're a member of my Patreon group, you're a member of my Facebook group, so you've seen me review a lot of photos. You know that I hate the critique concept, okay? And basically what I do when I review photos is I try very, very hard to approach it from the concept of, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I see through my eyes, and here's how you might consider changes, okay? But I hate when there's that kind of philosophy of right or wrong. The only right or wrong in photography involves physics, period. Contrary to what some other YouTubers may say, contrary to what some other photographers may say, the only right or wrong is basically physics. That's it. Everything else is subjective, okay? And that actually brings us to another one of the questions that we had beforehand, which is a good one. And let me just find it here. And this is from a different Carl. This is from Carl Wells. Carl asked, last week, I believe that you said that Rembrandt lighting does not look contemporary. Could you elaborate on it? And he says he knows he's not getting the exact quote right. So, Carl, I don't remember the exact quote, but I definitely remember the intent behind it because it's something I say a lot. Essentially, I'm not a fan. A lot of you have heard me talk about this before. I'm not a fan of Rembrandt lighting. The reason is it feels old to me. So indeed, not contemporary. And this is my own little quirk, right? So again, this is not it's right or wrong. Oh God, no, not at all. For me, Rembrandt lighting is reminiscent of the kind of lighting that basically was force-fed to me as a teenager because every book that I ever picked up about photography and lighting started with Rembrandt lighting. And of course, please wind the clock back a little bit. Use your imagination here. This was in the mid-1970s and late 1970s we're talking about here. Yeah, I'm not old, okay? So the problem was all those books that I was looking at that talked about lighting, they were all books that were written like in the 50s and the 60s. All the pictures were black and white. And it's just boring. And of course, the approach was, this is how you must do it. Well, I was a teenager in the 70s, man. I wasn't for doing things the way I was supposed to be doing them. So, I didn't like that. And so, literally, it's just, I'm being completely honest. It's stuck with me all these years. Rembrandt lighting is still a thing because Rembrandt lighting is good light when it's done right. Now, one of the challenges with Rembrandt lighting is it's easy to screw up if you're not paying attention. So, as much as Rembrandt lighting is tried and true and it's an old standby that's been around forever and it's still respected, it's still considered to be, great light, it is one of the more challenging lighting setups to do because if you don't do it right, it's simply not flattering. And if you don't do it right, it can become extremely distracting because of the shadow that is created from the nose. So, that also brings in another element of my lighting style that I'm very open about. I don't like to work that hard when I don't have to. So for me, that's why I'm not a big fan of Rembrandt lighting. Every now and then I'll roll it out and I'll do it. Every now and then something just clicks and I'm like, yeah, you know what? This would look really, really good with Rembrandt lighting. Get that whole 2-to-1 lighting ratio going on. Yeah, but not that often. Okay. And when I do it, I am being extremely careful to make sure, going back to the question that we had before, I'm doing it very careful. The other Carl's question, I'm being very careful to make sure that I'm getting that Rembrandt lighting balanced properly so that the lighting does not become obvious. In other words, especially as a photographer, I look at stuff, I see light right away. I see shadows. I see all that stuff. I see those ratios. So if I'm looking at a picture and the first thing I notice is, gosh, that shadow's harsh, and it's supposed to be Rembrandt lighting, bingo, right out of the box, that picture's ruined for me because this Rembrandt lighting failed. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not the possibility that somebody does something kind of really creative, but, it just, not my thing. So, but that's a great question. Cassandra had a great question, and I kind of solved it already in the chat, but this is the one that's worth bringing up for everybody here. So I definitely wanted to mention this. Her question is, she says that she knows that she needs to adjust her camera's LCD and her computer monitor, as she's finding that after post-processing and printing her photos, they always look dark. And her question is, she's doubting herself now, which is not good. Are they possibly underexposed, or are they just badly processed? So I have run into this question many, many times before, and I suffered through this exact problem back in the day when I did all my own printing and I had big Epson printers sitting here, and basically probably for about 6 months beat my head against the wall trying to get my prints the same brightness, light and dark, as what I was seeing on the computer screen. And I was color calibrating the computer screen. And this was just far enough back that we had calibration tools, but not calibration tools that went all the way through the print process. Because now you can get, calibration tools that are going to take you basically from camera all the way through to finished print. So that helps a lot. So this was back when, you had tools for calibrating computer screens, but that was it. And literally, after about 6 months of just like killing myself and wasting a ton of paper, because essentially every time I was printing, I was, having to create like an extra layer in Photoshop where I would basically do levels in that, and I would lighten stuff up, and, it was like kind of creating guesswork. And I was basically creating these actions where I automatically added in this levels layer that had my secret sauce dialed in. It got the prints close to where I wanted them. And literally, I had a conversation with a guy, just in passing, something came up, and I said something about, getting the brightness of printing together. And the guy like popped up right away, and he's like, "You work in the dark." I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Where you do your Photoshop, you're working in a dark room. You like the lights down, don't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, because it's just a lot more comfortable and all that kind of stuff. And like, I'd much rather have not bright light when I'm working on Photoshop." And the guy's like, "That's why your pictures are dark. That's simple." I'm like, "Come on, what are you talking about?" And he gave me a real simple solution. And my God, it worked first time right out of the box. So basically the way he explained it, it's real simple. It's like when you're in a dark room, all the light on your picture is coming from behind the picture. So to your eyes, it appears much brighter than it actually is. It's got nothing to do with how well your monitor is calibrated. It's got to do with the surroundings. It simply means that you are getting a backlit image. So what he told me to do, and this is like so wickedly simple, it was irritating that it worked. He said, take a piece of white paper, the same paper that you're printing on, and go into Photoshop on your computer and make a big file and just fill it with white. And then hold the white paper next to the white image on the screen. And he said, what you're going to find is, in your room, the way you normally work, the white paper in your hand is going to look dark gray compared to the white image on Photoshop. And already, as soon as he's saying that, I'm like, that makes sense. And sure enough, it does. And so the solution, without having to spend tons of money and doing all kind of, jumping through hoops, calibrating your printer, the solution was light your room so that the paper is the same brightness as the file on the computer screen. And then print it. Boom. Done. So the moral to the story is that's way too bright for my taste as far as working, in the surrounding environment. But literally all I did was just add that simple step of when I was getting ready to print, I put an extra light in the room that was close enough that I got that white paper. And indeed, it made my screen look so much darker at that point. My screen looked so much darker. But I was able to blend the two or match the two. And then I knew that I had the right brightness to go ahead and do the color correction on the image and then print it. And it worked like flawlessly. It worked. So all that being said, now that we have the better color management tools that will take you from camera all the way through to printer, if you can afford them, I highly recommend them if you're doing printing. Highly recommend them, okay? But if you can't, that's the down and dirty method that gets you pretty doggone close. It's still important in those situations, Cassandra, to, if your printer allows you, depending on which printer you're using, and I'm not going to lie, I'm so out of touch with printers at this point, so do a little Googling, okay? But as long as your printer allows you to set profiles, you should be making sure that you're setting the profile based on the type of paper you're printing on. That's always going to get you, much better color balance, all that kind of stuff, etc. So, Thomas Palmer, well, basically turning down the brightness of the screen is what you're going to be doing, because you have to turn down the brightness of the screen to get the two to match. Turning the room light on just saves you from having to turn that screen all the way down. That's all. Okay, that's essentially what's happening. But the idea is, and David, yeah, same thing. So the idea is to get that image where it matches, that the white where it matches the white on the paper, and then you're working in the proper brightness space for your printer. Okay, so now I guarantee you there are some hardcore techies out there whose heads are going to explode and say, no, but there's this math and there's this and this and everything else. Yep, there's RIP files, there's all that kind of stuff. They're right, okay? But I have a hunch Cassandra and a lot of the other folks here really are not looking to get that deep into printing because you probably don't do that much printing. This is the easy solution. So before somebody who's really into the hardcore tech goes off on me with all the tech details, I totally respect that. It's right. But for somebody that's just printing occasionally, there are simpler ways to do it. And that's one of them, okay? All right, so let's see. Casper had a couple questions here. Let me get one of them right now, Casper, and I'll come back to the others later. So his question is, when selling used gear and it's in pristine condition, how much should one lower the price? Casper, I don't have a formula for that. Somebody probably does. Let me be really clear. In fact, true story. Later this week, I will be doing a little bit more research on used camera gear because I have a whole bunch of Nikon gear for sale if anybody's looking for some Nikon stuff. So that being said, I did want to share with you, there's a website that is fairly new. I put the link in the chat window there. Let me bring it up on my screen, and I will switch the screen over here so you guys can see it. It's called Bokeh Market. So now I am not endorsing this website. Let's be clear before somebody goes off on me here. I'm just saying, hey, this one is not run by one of the camera retailers. It's not run by somebody that I don't believe they're going to buy your gear. I believe this is just, basically a way for you to do research. Okay. So I'm going to check it out just to get a sense before I start looking at the different camera companies or that. But, they're giving you trending rates. Like, here's a great example. I'll be selling a Nikon D810. I would have hoped to get about $1,900 for it. Given the fact that Nikon came out with a D850 and then had massive sales on them, this weekend, and that I completely expected that I will not be getting $1,900 for it. So indeed, they're saying, around $1,700 is kind of what the going rate is. So anyway, I would encourage you, check out a website like that to start. But in terms of a hardcore, here's the formula, I really don't know of one. I mean, anytime you're selling something along the way, it's really a matter of, what will the market bear? That's kind of the, the catch. So, all right, Nate Man, any plans on doing 100,000 subs video with a shoot of the YouTube Creator Trophy? Here's the challenge with the Creator Trophy. So if you don't know what Nate's talking about, when you hit 100,000 subscribers, YouTube sends you a silver play button. So it's in a little, like an 8x10 or 8.5x11 plaque, and it's a silver, actual real silver play button. And it's framed and the whole bit. My understanding, Nate, is that it actually takes you several months to get it. So I hope to be way beyond 100,000 by the time I actually get my plaque. I don't think I'm going to do a video for 100,000, but here's why. So, it's worth explaining this because I some people will forgive me. Other people are going to be like, I don't care. You're still a loser. Whatever. That's fine. Since I started this adventure, which is coming up on 2 years, I'm at about a year and 3/4 now, a little over a year and a half, actually. I've experimented with a lot of things, tried a lot of different video topics, tried a lot of different approaches to doing the videos. I have tried all kinds of stuff with live streams to see what will connect. I did not start this being an expert at anything. I started this being a guy that's done photography for his whole life. And all this YouTube stuff has been the grand experiment. And I am a big believer that, not that I am putting myself in this, group, but when you look at the great entrepreneurs, the Steve Jobs and all those people, they all tend to have this philosophy of break shit and move on. Try it. If it fails, you move on to the next thing, and so on. And I've tried to adopt that philosophy as much as possible. So this past summer, for like the last 3 months, I've been doing a lot of videos that are kind of gear based. And I'll tell you, on one hand, they're actually easier because they don't require as much shooting. But on the other hand, they're really not as much fun. And I've gotten very mixed results. Like, a lot of people seem to really love them. Today I did this honey badger one. And I honestly, I'm sorry to say, I think people like griping and arguing over what's better as opposed to actually liking a gear video. But so nonetheless, I had reached out to quite a few manufacturers and made some really, really good, or I should say established some really, really good relationships. I was given some gear to try for free. Some gear I was given discounts on. Most importantly, as I've explained in pretty much every one of these videos I've done, the most important thing I got is access. Really great example. Today, this video came out yesterday, right? Okay, so obviously I wasn't super complimentary about the Paul C. Buff company. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But obviously I talked about Interfit. So how many other YouTube channels could post a video about something like that? And if you go look at the comments on that video, not only did Interfit come in and answer questions for people and take care of some customer service for a guy that had a problem with the transmitter, Paul C. Buff Company came in and were very gracious and honest and open and positive in response to the video. How many other YouTubers have that kind of an environment and a connection with manufacturers? And for those of you that are members of my Facebook group, and if you're not, hey, you should be, okay? You know that in my Facebook group, and I'm going to go ahead and post the link here just in case some of you are not members. In my Facebook group, when I make these relationships with these different companies, I lean on them really hard to get their marketing people or their product designers to join the group and to participate. And don't get me wrong, they're not in there, they're not in there commenting and stuff every day. They don't have time for that. They're in a business. They're building product, okay? But the fact is that when we have real questions, they're available to us and they get us answers. So even like with the honey badgers, there were questions that came up in the comment section, really good questions that I did not know the answers to, and the answers weren't like online on the internet. So the best part is I was able to reach out and get those answers. By the end of today, I had those answers for people because I have a direct contact at the companies. So anyway, that's why I did these videos. I've got like 3 more kind of gear videos that I either need to do or really want to do. And then I am very determined this winter to really get back into shooting videos because there's a whole bunch of really great ideas that kind of got put aside when I did these. But again, it's an experiment. And I'm grateful, very grateful for those of you that, basically followed along and are extremely supportive. So for those of you that I'm really surprised, I totally expected that there were going to be all kind of, comments already tonight. Here, Doug's got a quick question. We'll get it out of the way because Doug gets antsy if he doesn't get his answer. So how large are the photos in your office, and are they canvas, wrap, matte, or glossy? Most of them, Doug, are 20 by 24, like the one that's back there behind the honey badger. That's a 20 by 24 print. It is a metallic print. I like them. I love the metallics. I'll be honest. I think they're cool. Indeed, some images look better than others. The stuff that's in the background, so here, that picture right there, that's also a 20 by 24. The little one right up there, those were 11 by 14s. Back over there, that's a 20 by 24. So that's it. Nate, thank you so much, man, for your super chat. I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate the support. So, so yeah, Doug, anyway, that's that part. So let me give you the quick backstory here, because I want to go on record again, because unfortunately I know that the crap is not done. Okay. So let's just get that out there. I don't want to whine about it, but I want to make sure that I'm on record and try and make this as concise as possible. So the cover art on my video said, why I dumped Buff. And it basically said for the interfit honey badgers. Okay. So I open up the video. If you haven't watched it yet, please watch it. I open up the video and I basically started out with an apology. I posted the video about the Digibees, which I love the Digibees. They're great strobes. Great strobes. I said that in the videos. I meant every word of it. I'm still saying it now. I've been a Buff customer since Buff became Buff in the early 1980s. My first strobes, and I showed them in the video, I had the coffee can white lightnings in my studio. You could buy them for $140 each, which back then was a ton of money, but still much cheaper than the alternatives, which back then it would have been the big power pack strobes. And there was no such thing as speed lights at that point. We had potato mashers, but we didn't have speed lights. Okay. And if you know what a potato masher is, you're just old like me. So bottom line, I started out the video with an apology, because when I did that Digibee video, I got blasted. Just about 50%, it's like 48 or 47% of my viewership for my channel is not in the United States. And that's, for me, honestly, that's one of the coolest things about doing this, is that I get to communicate with people all over the world. But people are upset because I recommended this flash, tell everybody how great it was, how much I loved it, and they had no way to buy it, period. Because Buff doesn't sell outside the United States unless you want to go through third parties and exporters and all that kind of stuff, which means that the cost is ridiculous. And then there's all kind of problems with warranties, which Buff tries to make good on. So to be clear, I put this in, maybe I should have said this in yesterday's video, but there was no reason to say it in yesterday's video. I've commented on this like probably 30 times today under the video. Buff Company is known for amazing customer service. Outstanding customer service. So the short of it is, in the video, I basically said a couple of things. One, I'm sorry for promoting a product that you can't get. Number two, I found a solution. And here's why I switched. So I switched because number one, and all I did was I voiced a concern that many people have voiced in the last 2 years. It's the same concern that Apple deals with every day. Paul C. Buff, the man, passed away in 2015. Paul C. Buff was the Paul C. Buff Company. He was the chief engineer and designer. He was the guy. All this stuff was his. So with him gone, what happens with the company? And indeed, for the last 2 years, they've had 2 products come out. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there should have been 10 products. I'm just saying facts. They had 2 products come out. They had the Digibee, which in all likelihood was in the works before Buff passed away. Maybe not. I might be wrong there. Again, that's a guess. Want to be clear. And then very recently, they had this new wireless trigger called CyberSense, which actually uses sliders on it, like old school sliders. And it only has 4 channels. It can only control 4 strobes, right? So I talked about the fact that it is a legitimate concern. What is the future of the Buff Company? Are they going to be able to innovate? Are they going to be able to keep coming out with new products? And then I talked about the fact that this honey badger, which you could call it, I'll call it, a Paul C. Buff knockoff, but it's better. On the specs, it matches the Digibee spec for spec, but for one, only one. The LED modeling lamp in the Digibee is a 75 watt LED modeling lamp. The LED lamp in the honey badger is a 60 watt. Not a big difference. Okay? It surpasses the Digibee in a lot of other specs. Some simple, some big. Number one, uses a Bowens mount. The problem with the buff stuff always has been you had to use the buff mounts. And you had the 2 prongs you had to stick together, and then you had to line them up and get them to clamp. Bowens mounts, quick, simple, easy, and it's one little thumb thing, done. And Bowens mounts are very universal. Even like Godok's Flashpoint, a lot of you are into like the 8200s, all that stuff. Bowens mounts, really, really easy, okay? Number 2, the gear tilt handle. So watch, guys, you're seeing me do it real time here. No video stuff, because I got accused of this today. I'm going to loosen this thing up. See, it's spinning. In fact, you know what? Look, the handle is off. Now notice, this is a flash that has no counterbalance, but it's not falling over. Okay? There's the handle. No trickery. It's got a geared, ratcheted handle. So you are not going to drop it, especially if you've got a modifier in the front and you loosen it and forget to grab the unit. It is not going to fall over. Okay? Sorry guys, 1 second here. We got somebody who decided to do a little spam in there. Okay. The controls, super simple, really basic. The receiver is built in. The buff receivers, I broke 2 of them. $30 each. And I know I'm not the only person that ever breaks those things. Okay. And now, in all fairness to Policy Buff, the company, maybe if I would have called and said, hey, these things bent and I can't use them anymore, maybe they would have replaced them because their customer service is outstanding. So I want to be proactive and float that. Maybe they would have. But to me, I'm not the kind of person that's going to call a company, expect them to replace something like that for me. I understood the design when I bought it. It broke because I banged the transceiver on the top. I see it as a design flaw. It's not the most efficient and effective design. That's a fact. But, I'm not going to contact them and say, hey, I screwed up. Will you fix it? I don't think that's right. So maybe I should have. Cool. We'll go there. All right. But the receiver's built in and the price is a whole heck of a lot better. $299.99 compared to $349.95. And you get a 24-inch pop-up softbox that has a front diffuser and a baffle in it for that price. Somebody asked about lithium battery. I just saw it come by. Cassandra, they come with a battery pack. They do not come with a battery pack. Neither does the Buff. However, today, you can use the Policy Buff Mini Vagabond battery pack. You can use the photogenic. It's called the photogenic ion sine wave converter. Basically the same thing. In fact, most people think that the Buff is a knockoff of the photogenic or the photogenic's a knockoff of the Buff. I'm not trying to cause any grief there. I'm just saying when you look at them, they're pretty doggone identical except for the colors, right? You can use either of those, or early 2018, the folks at Interfit have confirmed for me that they will have a lithium battery available. And just like with the Honey Badger, you can love it or hate it that they're doing it, but just like with the Honey Badger, it's going to be a better price point, and it's got some better features to it. I'm not allowed to share those features, so you're going to have to take my word for it. I know what some of them are. The company was kind enough to share that with me today on the condition that I do not tell the world what they are at this point. But they are substantial kind of benefits. Oh, and guys, I just saw this. I hope you're noticing who's commenting in the chat window. The folks at Interfit are kind enough to be here tonight, okay, to answer questions for you guys. So if you have questions, they're here. Ask them. All right. So anyway, the short of this, guys, apparently a lot, and so I will take responsibility for this. I made the video. Apparently a lot of Buff people, and don't get me wrong, I can totally understand why Buff people are loyal, but in my video, I didn't tell people here that they should go drop all their Buff stuff and go buy Interfit. No, none of that. But apparently a lot of Buff people felt that that's what I meant. And they were really upset. And I'm sure a lot of you know who the angry photographer is. You've heard me talk about Ken a lot. I love Ken. Seriously, I love the guy. I think the guy is awesome. He's a little different, but I think he's awesome. I have no animosity towards him whatsoever, but he took to Twitter and YouTube this morning and just pretty much bashed the bejesus out of me, accused me of libeling and slandering Policy Buff, yada, yada, yada. And so allegedly he has a video coming out any minute now. that's going to talk about how much of a loser I am because I was completely wrong about the Pulse Buff Flash and because I had an affiliate link. So I just want to make sure that since I'm going to have the angry photographer so angry at me, I want to do a little something for you guys. And the folks at Interfit were kind enough to extend this to me. And I want to make sure I give you a discount. So you can buy Interfit products at Amazon.com. You can buy Interfit products at B&H, all the other photo retailers. You can walk into a camera store and buy Interfit products. So in the description below my video on the Honey Badger, there are 2 Amazon links for both the single head and for the 2-light kit. Indeed, if you purchase from those links, I'll make a couple pennies on an Amazon affiliate program. I will. I won't apologize for that. I appreciate the support. But you know what? For you guys that are here especially, I am putting a link in here to the Interfit website and also a promo code. If you're interested in any of the Interfit products, that could be their big strobes, the ones that the S1 and the S1A, which are the high-speed sync and TTL strobes. The S1 is lithium battery and AC. The S1A is AC only, okay? It could be any of their modifiers. They have a great line of modifiers. It could be any of their strobes. They also have, for those of you that love those Westcott LEDs that I always complain about being too expensive, go look at the Interfit LED panels. They are sweet. And while they're not cheap, they are reasonably priced and a fraction of the cost of what the Westcott panels are. Okay? And here's the thing, guys, just so we're all clear on this, I don't make a dime if you take advantage of that link. Interfit extended me that offer, and I turned it down. So this video, my thoughts, my reason for changing is simply so that I'm working with gear that my followers have access to and can use and can learn from. For me to work with the buff lights, I like the buff lights, but honestly, I'm liking these better for everything they offer and the price. My God, it's a win-win. But it's important for me to be working with gear that's accessible to people. Otherwise, I'm teaching you stuff that you can't turn around and go do. So that's the point behind this. So anyway, let's get back to some good questions. Elenchrome's good stuff too, Thomas Palmer. You know, once again, none of my videos, especially with gear, have you ever heard me say you need to use this or like you suck? I mean, come on, guys. You know, there's believe me. Oh, the other people. I mean, obviously the buff people kind of got their panties in a bunch, but Godox people, man, you talk about photographers that are proud of their gear. Like Godox is right up there with like the Sony people, and nothing negative. I'm just being honest. Like, you know, Godox people were all upset because I didn't mention Godox in the video. It was a video about honey badgers. Everybody's like, oh, what about Godox? Like, I didn't say anything bad about Godox. You know, and I want to prove something to you guys. So I only have one of them up here, but you guys, because of things that I said in the past, seem to have it in mind that I don't like Godox. I've never said that. I have said that I'm not a huge fan yet of the AD200, which, by the way, I own, paid cash for, okay? I was disappointed by its weight and disappointed by the fact that there's no really convenient way to mount it without purchasing different mounts, all right? That's what I said. Go back and watch the videos. But here, look, Godox, it's mine. I bought it at Amazon.com. I'll show you the receipt, okay? So this is my little toss around speed light. This is their, TT685. You know, as much as I will probably not use this more than once a year, I'm a big believer in the idea that in my camera bag, I always want a basic TTL flash for those days where I'm going to go see my grandson and I need a flash and I don't want to have to think about it. I'm just going to turn this thing on, set it on TTL, and probably bounce it off a ceiling. That's my flash. Godox is great. I buy them. So, you know, I've never trashed Godox. My gripe with Godox is that people buy these things and don't really understand the features that they're getting. And so they're really kind of overspending. You know, having the features because you might need it is kind of ridiculous. Because part of what I love about this, like a lot of people are like, why wouldn't you use the Godox in a studio? This is why. I can reach behind this flash and I can control this flash without looking. I understand what the buttons are. I understand where they go. When we talk about the remote control, the remote for the interfit flashes is much easier than the Godox. Now, in fairness to Godox, they did just come out with an improved version that if you already are a Godox user, you've got to go buy another remote, okay? But they did come out with a new one that simplified their menu a lot. But for me, I don't need the high-speed sync. I don't need the TTL in the studio. And you guys know when I go out on location, I work with speedlights most of the time. So as much as these can totally go on location, I generally don't take my studio strobes out on location. And you know why? It's not something against the gear. It's because I'm lazy. If you pay close attention to my videos, my studio strobes for the most part are mounted on boom arms and pens, baby pins in my studio. I don't want to have to take them down, pack them up, move them, all that kind of stuff. No, I put them in place and they get used in the studio. And then if I go out on location, I have the LumaPro Speedlight kits, which you guys know that I use. So that's just the way I like to work. But boy, the Godox people, man, were they like bent out of shape. So, hey, bottom line at the end of the day, what made my day, totally made my day, is the fact that the Buff Company acknowledged that, hey, there's different gear for different people. And even having competition, it keeps everybody honest. It keeps everybody honest, it keeps everybody on their toes, and it keeps everybody innovating. I have no problem with the Buff Company. I've spent a lot of money as a Pulp C Buff user since the early 1980s, mid-1980s, okay? So I don't want to see them fail, but indeed, I've paid enough money to earn the right to be concerned about their future and to basically put them on notice and say, hey, prove to me, a consumer, that you've got a future. And I committed to them in my response to their comment that when they show me something with innovation, I will be the first person to talk about it for sure. So anyway, yeah, and guys, here's the thing. I mean, the whole Ken thing, you're not going to get me to trash him. Believe me, he's been trashing me all day. I'm not going to do it. And I'll speak out if I think a YouTuber's out, completely out of control. Ken is Ken. And, we can get into all kind of theories, but fact of the matter is that when you get past his eccentricities, and I'm not trying to say that to be impolite, but when you get past his eccentricities, the guy's damn smart, okay? He's damn smart. When he's talking about stuff that's in his lane, that gear, I don't doubt it. So, it's kind of one of those things. And again, everybody's got their thing that, that they're really, really good at, okay? If I started doing videos about Canon tomorrow, you'd all be like, what the hell does he know about Canon? Because, I know nothing, about Canon, okay? So, again, it's that kind of a thing. But, hey, thanks, by the way, Interfit, for making it here today. Really, really appreciate it. Obviously, gang, they're not going to be able to be here for every TogChat. But the point is, these companies, competition is good for everybody. And this is a product that's worth looking at. If you've got Buff products and you're happy with it, congratulations. If you're working with Godox and you're happy with it, congratulations. Not a big deal. But there are a lot of people out there that are looking for solutions, and I fed them a solution that they can't use when I did the Buff video. That's why I sought out Interfit. That's all. Okay? So, all right, guys, let me scroll back up here because I know that there were some ones going back here, or some questions. We had Kevin Kassar, the 685. I hope it is. I haven't really had a chance to use it yet. So obviously that flash, by the way, it's brand new. It's for this. By the way, this is the new baby. Some of you were asking me earlier about this little piece of glass right here. This is the new 45mm f1.2 Pro lens from Olympus. I paid cash for it. It wasn't free. It's not on loan. It's mine. This will be, so you all know that I love that Tokino 100mm f2.8 lens. This is my new portrait go-to, gang. I've got my first couple shots on Instagram with this today. I'll be posting on Facebook and that later. Amazing lens, gorgeous. And if you're into the bokeh, which you guys know, I'm not that hung up on the bokeh, but if you're into the bokeh, Olympus has done some really, really amazing stuff with what they call feathered bokeh. And believe me, I'm not going to pretend to know all the science behind the optics as they put together, but notoriously Micro Four Thirds, it's hard to get that same kind of bokeh you're going to get with a full frame camera, and especially with the Sonys and all that. Hate to tell you, it does an amazing job. So you will see a video coming up where I'm going to compare this lens and the bokeh from this lens to a Nikkor 85mm 1.8 lens, shooting both of them at wide open. The 85mm 1.8 at 1.8 and this 45mm at 1.2. So 45mm on a Micro Four Thirds, that's the equivalent of a 90mm. So you guys know I used to do my portraits with the Tokino 100 on full frame. I'll be working at 90mm now, which is just a tiny bit shorter, but no problem at all. I've been really, really happy using it. It's actually, it's awesome. And I'm going to tell you guys, I don't want to get into any camera debates tonight, please, but I will tell you this. I am having so much fun with Olympus. They didn't pay me to say it. They didn't pay me to change. They did give me a discount. I will explain that in the videos, but I had to buy my gear. They were kind enough to let me try it out because I reached out and said to them, look, I'm interested in switching. The incentive is I've got 100,000 people that are potentially going to see a video about me switching, and most importantly, why. It's not going to be a Jason Lanier thing where I'm going to, go trash Nikon because I went to Sony, whatever. And that's not fair. He didn't really trash Nikon, but it got a lot of attention, and everybody said he trashed them. He didn't trash them. He gave his reasons, and he actually gave really good reasons for switching. My reasons are very similar, but I took a slightly different approach in terms of how I wanted to approach my photography, what was important to me, what my needs were. And actually, I have a lot of you guys to thank for that, because all these questions that I've been answering, for the last year about megapixels and dynamic range and all that kind of stuff, the more and more and more I answered these questions, the more and more and more I started questioning, why am I making the purchasing decisions that I make? Darko, are the menus intuitive? Yes. On this camera, the menu is awesome. When I first, those of you that have been following along, I rented one before I talked to Olympus and asked to borrow one. I did a 6-day rental from lensrentals.com because, again, and that came out of my pocket. I wanted to see what the camera was all about. And literally right after I ordered the rental and was waiting for it to ship, I came across like 5 articles that talked about how bad the Olympus menus were. And I was like, oh, God, no. And I just spent the money. But then I read a little bit deeper, and that was on older model Olympus cameras. Apparently the general, and I've never as much as handled an older model Olympus, so I can't speak to that. But apparently there were a lot of people that were bothered by the menus. I got this camera. That was one of the first things I looked at. I was like, okay, I'm worried about the menu now, even though I'm hearing the new one's not that bad. The menu's super simple. And the great part, Sato, is on this new camera, you don't dive deep into the menu. Like literally everything's like one layer from the top. That's it. So it's a lot like the way Sony works. Okay. Except if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I handled Sony. Sony, you kind of go across the top and the menus drop underneath. This one still, your sub menus are down the side, but there's only I think 2 sub menus that have like a third layer to it. So pretty much everything is like one layer down from the top. So like really, really super simple. As far as the intuitive question, I'm going to answer you yes with a pause. And here's what I mean. So I'm a Nikon guy originally. Switching over to Olympus, I had to get used to how they group things, right? And of course, just like no different than going from like Canon to Nikon or Canon to Sony or Nikon to Sony. Some things have different names for different features, right? So there's an adaptation process, but that doesn't make any of them bad. The idea that if I would have switched from Nikon to Sony, that wouldn't make Sony bad because I'd have to adapt to the menus. It's a different camera system. I literally, part of the reason why this camera's here, right now it goes everywhere with me. I'm not kidding, all day long. It's like my baby. It's right nearby. Anytime I'm just like sitting thinking while I'm watching television tonight. This is how pathetic I am. While I'm watching television tonight, I'll have this camera in my hands and I'll be working through all of the menus and sorry guys, let's get rid of that one. I'll be working through the menus, working through all the buttons. I'm still working on making sure that I have it customized the way that I ultimately want it, because obviously right now I'm thinking, okay, well, this makes sense. And I have joined a bunch of the Olympus groups on Facebook, and I've read a bunch of articles about how people have chosen to do their customized function buttons. So I'm feeling pretty good about it, but there's still one or two that I'm thinking, you know what? I may switch this feature out, to a different one. But yeah, I probably for the next, I'd say realistically from now to the end of the year, I will probably keep this camera very close, handle it a lot. You guys know it's really, really important to me photographing people. I don't want to be thinking about my cameras. I mean, same as when I talked about the honey badgers. It's a super easy interface to learn. And this is really, for me, it's big advantage over like a Godox type setup. Not dissing Godox. When I'm in the studio, I want simplicity. And that's exactly how this is designed. It's designed to be simple. Out on location, that's a different story. I might want TTL. I might want high-speed sync. When I'm shooting with my LumaPros, I have those options. But, again, so it's different needs. And believe me, gang, I totally understand that some of you, it makes a lot more sense for you to have one light that can do everything. I get that. For me, I like to simplify things as much as possible. And given that this is what I do for a living and I work with this stuff every day, it's important to me not to have to think about it. So Thomas Palmer, is this kind of a strap useful? Are you referring to, so this actually has two pieces on it right now. One, I've got a Peak Design hand grip, which I actually really like. I went with Peak Design. So I ran in my Facebook group. You guys were actually very helpful. I ran a poll in my Facebook group to find out what kind of straps people were using, because for years I've used some really, really old school Domke straps, which I love. And I considered using them on these cameras, but I wanted a strap that I could detach. That was really the biggest thing. So what's nice about these Peak Design ones, if you've never seen one, these little buttons here, just press, pull it out, and boom, straps off. That's it. It's like real simple. And then all that's left on your camera is this. So while I have both things attached right now, if I'm in the studio, this camera is going to be just like this. That's what I'm working with. It's on my hand, period. Okay. If I'm out on location, then I'm going to wear it and I will put these locks back in, and they actually lock in. So they're kind of like press and release, and that's it. And then the other nice little bonus is the hand grip, and also with the straps, you can get the little base plate from Peak Design, which is Arca Swiss compatible. So if you have an Arca Swiss tripod, which you guys know I'm using the Acrotech ball heads, so it locks right in. So yeah, they're good. And I bought those. They weren't handed to me, none of that stuff. So yes, and that's why you don't hear me dissing the geartographers right now. You guys know that I get on geartographers and give them a hard time about being more interested in the gear. In the last couple weeks, I've melted a credit card or two, making the switch. So yeah, so there's going to be some really good deals on Nikon gear real soon. So I'm doing, literally tomorrow, I'm doing my last shoot that involves Nikons. And that's to be able to do the comparison in the studio of the Micro Four Thirds and the full frame. I did some stuff on location yesterday, and I'll have Monet back in the studio tomorrow, and we're going to do a comparison with the Micro Four Thirds and the full frame. And then the Nikons all go, they all go bye-bye. So yeah, so it's been, Steven Stiles, that is an Olympus in my hand. Not all is lost. Yeah, and so I'm not going to lie, guys, this has been an interesting path. I will say this much, and this one's going to get me in trouble, but that's fine. I'll go out on a limb here. I am finding that the Micro Four Thirds users are some of the nicest photographers on the internet. Sorry, gang, but it's true. There's no chest pounding. There's no fist banging. There's no yelling and screaming about it's better or it's worse. They're all like, great to see you. Come on in. The water's warm. Have some fun. Like, that's it. And I got to be honest with you, that's where, I want to get back to with my photography. And so, again, a big part is, yes, Riyadh, Nikon D810 is my primary camera. I also have a D50 and I also have a D7100. So all three of those will be going away. And Julie, I did decide to do a mix of lenses with the Micro Four Thirds. So I've got zooms. I have their 7-14. I have the 12 to 40. So 7 to 14 is a 14 to 28 millimeter equivalent in the full frame, or 35 millimeter. I have the 12 to 40, which is a 24 to 80. And I have the 40 to 150, which is an 80 to 300. But then I also bought a few primes. I have their 25 millimeter and 45 millimeter f1.2 lens. They're part of their new trinity of lenses, the three 1.2 lenses. I also purchased a 30 millimeter macro because in my entire career, I've always hung on to a macro lens just to have it for those few cases where it can be a lot of fun. I also, because I did get a very gracious discount, I purchased a 300 millimeter, which is a 600 millimeter equivalent. So I'm actually going to go and play with some wildlife photography. In fact, next week I'm going to go down to the state of Maryland and photograph bald eagles for the first time in my life. And actually looking very, very much forward to that. It'll be a lot of fun. So that's coming up. So let's see here. Cecil, no, I'm not selling the LumiPro flashes. Sorry. LumiPros are great. All I had to do was buy a different transmitter for them. I was using the Photox Odin 2 with the Nikons, and now I'm using the Photox, still Photox, but the Aries 2. The LumiPros have the Photox receivers built into them, which is kind of another nice, nice bonus. So. Nate, man, shooting large format is the way to go. Hey, I will tell you, mate, in New York at Photo Plus this past, whatever it was, October, I was surprised at just how many large format camera manufacturers were there. And when I say large format, I'm talking like good old fashioned sheet film. It was actually pretty cool. There were some, there was some neat stuff there. Yeah, Steven, my entire life, man, I've never done any kind of wildlife photography other than like there's a squirrel. Right, I've done plenty of that stuff. So yeah, I figured, it's I do occasionally get to shoot sports, so that's why. So just to be clear, so you guys didn't think I went like clear off my rocker. The reason why I bought the lens is because I do occasionally get to shoot sports, and a 300 millimeter lens that is actually a 600 millimeter equivalent is sweet, and it's small. Okay, it's really small. It's basically the same size as like a Nikkor 70 to 200 2.8. So it's an awesome size. So since I was able to get a good deal at it, I thought, you know what, I'm going to get that lens because I can even also add a teleconverter to it and make it an 840 millimeter equivalent. But it's like, yeah, you know what? I want to go try it. I live, there's a place in Maryland. It's not that far from me, about 2 hours from me. It's called Conowingo Dam. And this time of year, every year, I guess the eagles, and I know I'm probably going to get the nature stuff wrong, but the eagles, I guess they're migrating or whatever. But they go and they feed on the fish that are kind of stunned because they're swimming upstream and they're hitting against the rocks and stuff as the dam's releasing. So apparently it's a great place to get, images of the bald eagles, and all the local camera clubs from around here, they do big pilgrimages there every year. So I just, I see it all the time in terms of people posting pictures from it and that, and I've never really had the gear to do it. So Darko, weight wasn't the deciding factor, but weight was a big piece of it. The deciding factor for me really was reaching a point after trying to convince so many people that they were way hung up on all the wrong features in their cameras. In other words, way hung up on dynamic range, way hung up on megapixels. The more and more I had to keep talking to people about this, the more I started realizing, like, why are we so hung up on this? What am I really gaining? Here I am using a D810. What am I really gaining? And I was proud of myself that I didn't want to run out and buy the D850 because it really would have been stupid for me to buy the D850. The D850 is a beautiful camera, beautiful. But what am I going to do with the D850? 95% of my work is seen online. So it's like, why do I need this? And that just all got me to thinking. And then literally just, I was thinking about the Panasonics. The full history is I was thinking about the Panasonics because I have the GH5 and it shoots nice stuff. But everything I kept reading kept pointing me back to Olympus for stills. And the irony of it is I'm not kidding. I could be in their corporate headquarters in 12 minutes if I ran out this door right now. Like, it's right down the road, literally. But I've never considered them. And so I started doing more research on the Micro Four Thirds. It kept pushing me, to look at Olympus. And I had the good luxury because of what I do for you guys on YouTube. When I was at Photo Plus in New York, I spent some time talking to Gavin Hoey, who all of you know is a great YouTuber from the UK. I also got to meet a guy that I've always admired, who's probably one of the foremost bird photographers in the world, and that's Scott Bourne. And ironically got to meet another guy who's an Olympus shooter who lives like minutes from me, and I've never met him. His name's Frank Smith. He's one of the Olympus visionaries. Spent a lot of time talking to these guys, and they convinced me, just go try it. So I was already kind of 1 foot into trying it. So I came home, and literally the day that I got home from Photo Plus, I went online and I rented one. And pretty much as soon as I got it, I knew that I was really wanting to give this a serious run, and I wanted to use it for more than a couple of days in a rental. So I was able to get some contact information from the folks at Olympus through some of these connections that I made at Photo Plus, and said, hey, is there any way that I can just borrow a set of gear for a couple weeks and use it? And they're like, you know what, we can totally do that. So they lent me a camera, 3 lenses, and the terms were pretty simple, that I would agree to sit down with their marketing people afterwards and essentially do a survey about what I liked, what I didn't like, what my thoughts were, etc. And they said in exchange for that, we will offer you this one-time discount on the gear. And so literally it was like one time I could go to Olympus.com and buy gear. So that was kind of, the back and forth trade. That's, if I wanted to change, they were going to make it a little easier for me. So did save me some money. Still spent a ton of money. You have no idea. But I'm really thrilled. I'm having a lot of fun with the gear. Lightweight is wonderful. The smaller size is wonderful. What I'm finding about Olympus and the way that the cameras are laid out, I always talk, you guys have heard me talk about the ergonomics of the Nikons and how I love them. Olympus doesn't look like a camera that's got the world's most amazing ergonomics, but you got to hold it and try it out. It really has great ergonomics. The camera is, because it's small, my philosophy always was, well, it's small, how good could the ergonomics be? It's great. It fits wonderfully. Everything is it's simply where it should be. The camera is solid. The lenses have metal focusing rings, but they're not heavy. Just really well put together. So anyway, I will definitely, I will get to that. And actually, I see Gerard here, making mention of this. One thing I will say about Micro Four Thirds gear in general. So this is both Olympus and Panasonic. And if you guys don't understand this, by the way, Olympus and Panasonic essentially created a consortium, and they share technology on things like lenses and flashes, which is also really nice. How great would the world be if Canon and Nikon and Sony actually shared some of their technology? How wonderful would that be? But that'll never happen, right? So Panasonic and Olympus actually share a lot of technology when it comes to that. So lenses are generally cheaper. Camera bodies are generally cheaper. In fact, today for Cyber Monday, you can purchase the OMD EM1 Mark II, the body that I showed you, $1,600. Well, $1,700, $1,699, which is like, off the charts price for a high-end, DSLR. So again, I don't expect anybody to run out and change because of what I did. No. But I do want to take advantage of this platform that I have with this camera system to show people, like, look, remember why you picked up a camera in the first place. For some people, the reason they picked up a camera is because they thought it looked cool and they're into toys. Awesome. That's great. Okay. But most of us pick up a camera for the first time because we have an interest in being able to take pictures, and that's what intrigues us, and that's what hooks us. It's that process. And then somewhere along the line, so many of us, and myself included, I've made the same mistake over the years. We get hung up in the gear, and the bigger is better, and the bigger is a must. And guess what? It's not. It's just simply not. So, for me, if there's anything that I have learned from you guys in the last year and a half, it's that I want to get back to having fun. Because I do my best work when I'm having fun. I don't know about you, but I do. I do my best work when I'm having fun. So that's what the Olympus is going to do for me, period. And yeah, I will talk a lot more about that, along the way. So, all right, gang, let me just squeeze back here, see what else we missed. Stephen, I will gladly share when I get to go down there, as long as everything comes together. And if not, if I don't make it down to Bald Eagles, there's some other stuff coming up. I promise you I will share some of my images from all that. I'm not ashamed to show that I suck at something. And believe me, I fully expect that if I go down there with a 600 or an 840 millimeter equivalent, which means I will be technically well prepared with the gear, I fully expect that I will probably suck trying to handle that lens. It's been a long time since I've shot a lot of sports. I've never really done wildlife. So certainly I understand all the premises. I know all the things I have to do, but come on, we all know that when it comes to actually putting that into use, sometimes that can be a little bit of an adventure. Now, I will say that Olympus has some great features like Pro Capture that are going to help make up for my deficiencies when it comes to shooting that stuff. So certainly I will be taking advantage of those features in order to try and give me, a little bit of an edge up. So the important part is, I'm being honest with myself about what I can and can't do, what I'm good and what I'm not good at, and I'm going to allow the camera to help me in the areas where it can help me and make a difference. That's knowing your gear, and that's using your gear to the best possible advantage. Not being lazy, not, just doing spray and pray, but actually using the gear to, really make sure that you're going to nail the shot the way you want to nail a shot, especially if in a situation where it's a challenge. So yeah, I promise you, I will share. I'm not beyond, sharing that stuff, even if it's not that great. Okay. I've never called myself the greatest photographer in the world, guys. So don't worry. So let's see here. I saw a couple of questions back here. Let me try and get to these guys because, as usual, I'm running over time. That's a shocker, right? Irving asks, can you use the Honey Badger with the Godox AD600 together to shoot? You could, but I don't think you're going to find a transmitter that will control both of those. So what you would do is either or. Like, let's say you already have the transmitter for the Godox. You would just go ahead and use the Honey Badger. Make sure that cell is turned on. Oops. Let's go this way. Make sure that the cell button is lit up when you're shooting. That turns on the optical sensor, and you could fire it that way. Or vice versa. You could, if you have the Interfit remote, trigger your flash with the Interfit remote, which would be triggering the Honey Badger, and then make sure that the 8600 has an optical sensor attached to it, and you can do that. So that would work. VTP STTU, what is Micro Four Thirds? Micro Four Thirds is the smaller of the three major format sizes. So you've got, full frame, which is kind of the 35 millimeter equivalent, even though it's really not. And then there's APS-C, which is a little smaller yet, and then Micro Four Thirds, which is a little smaller yet. So just to give you an idea here, that's going to be out of focus because I can't refocus the camera on the fly, but there's the sensor size. Let me catch that. There's the sensor size of the Micro Four Thirds. Okay, it's much smaller than full frame. Okay, so if we're talking like bench test quality, yes, there are definite advantage in a full frame, but what you've got to really kind of be honest with yourself about is what do you really need? Okay. In other words, how much are having all those megapixels and all that dynamic range impacting your final shot? I showed a picture here. It's going to come up over top of me. I showed you this picture a week or two ago. We were talking about this. This shot was done with a Nikon D200. That was a 10.2 megapixel camera. So that's half the megapixels, and that was an APS-C, right? So that's half the megapixels of this Olympus camera. 10.2 megapixels. It's not hurting for quality. Okay, so you got to understand. At the end of the day, it's got a lot to do with: are you exposing things properly? Are you lighting things properly? If you are I actually had somebody say to me recently, it was actually after one of these TogChats, that the reason why they were going to go spend the money for a Sony a7R III, which is a beautiful camera, so let's not say that Joe's bashing Sony. I'm not. But they were saying that if they were going to go spend the money for an a7R III, because they liked how much dynamic range it had and how many megapixels it had, so that it would make up for the fact that they weren't as good a photographer yet as what I am. And I'm like, wow, I'm not going to lie, that was kind of head splitting, because it wasn't that it was a compliment to me. I mean, the person was being generous to me, but that's like the worst reason in the world to buy those features. It's like, okay, well, let me buy a camera and spend, $3,000+ for the body just because it's got enough in it that's going to make my sucky work look better. Like, what's wrong with that thought process? Why not learn how to do things right and buy the gear that you really need? In fact, gear that's going to be more affordable, gear that's going to be more practical to use, gear that has a wider range of lenses. You know, you look at Olympus compared to Sony. Sony's getting a lot better. They're coming out with a lot more lenses now, okay? But, you know, Olympus has a boat ton of lenses available. You know, Olympus is a camera company that's been around like forever, just like Nikon, just like Canon. Sony is an electronics company that makes, you know, phones and creates movies. And Sony did Betamax. Sony had, you know, memory sticks. Remember all that stuff? So I'm not saying Sony's crap, but, you know, let's just be straight, okay? Sony is not a company that's dedicated to photography. Now, neither are Nikon and Olympus. Or Canon. Canon makes printers. You know, Nikon has like, you know, binoculars and other medical stuff, as does Olympus. But these are companies that built themselves, you know, as camera companies. So it's all a matter of what you like. But just to spend money on the latest, greatest, biggest doesn't get you anywhere. So that's pretty much it. What lens did I use for that 10.8 megapixel camera, Audi Kid? That was actually, at the time, it was a Nikkor 70-200 f2.8 zoom. Probably would have been, I'd have to go back and look at EXIF data, but probably would have been somewhere between like 90 and maybe 110 millimeter is about where it would have been set. But at that point in time, I was working pretty much all zoom lenses. So, okay. Let's see here. So what else are we missing? Irving Carrera, could you use both those remotes together on the Honey Badger and the 8600? I don't think that you could, because they're hot shoe remotes. So I don't know how you would make that work, to be honest with you. Okay. You know, let me be really clear, guys. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. So let's, Irving, I want to make sure that you don't get too caught up in my excitement for this flash. Okay. I love these. I think they're great. But Irving, before you run out and buy one of these, because I'm going to make an assumption here, so please correct me if I'm wrong, all right? I'm going to make an assumption that you already own an AD600. That's kind of what I'm hearing here. So unless you intend to use them completely independently of each other, kind of like I do, I have my Honey Badgers in the studio, and I love them in the studio. It's not to say that I'll never take them on location, but I didn't get them primarily for location work. I got them primarily for studio work. So unless you're looking at using a Honey Badger in the studio and then using the AD600 out, you know, on location, that kind of stuff, I would actually discourage you from blending them together, mainly because they are two dramatically different systems, okay? So, you know, there is a lot of value to buying into a system. Those of you that are Godox users completely understand the fact that part of what Godox did is very revolutionary. Let's be clear. I have nothing against Godox. It's very revolutionary, the fact that they've gone from Speedlight all the way up through, you know, studio monolights with a system that's completely interchangeable in terms of the controls, the radio, you know, remotes, all that kind of stuff, and accessories. That's brilliant. It's great. Okay. Hopefully other companies will do that. Already you're seeing Interfit do some of that. Interfit has the S1, the S1A, and the Honey Badger. They can all be controlled from the same remote. So you can set them up in groups. You can set them up in channels, all with one remote, which is awesome. All right. So, but if you're just kind of randomly like, oh, well, maybe I should have got this, I'm not sure. Please, like, seriously, I would discourage you from running out and buying one of these right away. Okay. What you need to do, and this is my advice for any of you that are looking at buying any kind of strobes, even the Interfit. Try and imagine your photography today and try and imagine where you're going to be 2, 3, 5 years from now, or shall we say where you want to be. Okay. And what you're going to want to do then is basically, after you've got that answer in your head or that goal in mind, then you want to go ahead and you want to look at all the different systems to see which system is going to work the best for you. It has the features that you want and it works the way that you want. And also, hopefully, it's within a price range that you feel is reasonable. And then even if you're just buying one strobe to start, buy one. Okay. And learn to use that one. Max yourself out. Get to the point where you're just bored stiff doing, because you can do everything that you could ever think of, and then buy the second one and add it and so on and so forth. So Irving, I saw your comment there that says you're looking to use it one for studio, one for location, in which case, yes, these are, for me, awesome studio strobes. Absolutely love them. Highly recommend it. Can't beat the price. The quality is there. The features are there. So yeah. make sure you use that discount code that's up there. Like I said, I don't get any money for that. So before Ken Wheeler accuses me of, dishing out on their affiliate link, it's not an affiliate deal at all. You're buying it directly from Interfit. You get the 10% off discount, which I highly encourage you to use. If you want to use my affiliate links and support the channel, that's great too. You can use the links that are underneath the video, but I'll tell you straight up, you'd be pretty stupid not to use the 10% link. So go for it. Okay. Let's see. Alexander, they all have different ratios. So does Olympus. He's pointing out here that most micro four thirds are 4.3 because it's handy, but some Panasonic cameras also have others. So your information is actually a little bit incorrect. So let me explain. Even the Panasonic sensors are 4x3, but through software interpolation, they'll basically go ahead and crop down, and you can do 16:9. You can do 3x4. You can change all that. So here, Malcolm, I'll type it in one more time. It's way back up in the feed, but that's all right. Let me paste it in there for you one more time. Okay. There you go. Interfit. They're telling you. Okay. They offer me the commission very graciously, and I said no dice. Okay. So there you go, Malcolm. There's that discount code. So seriously, it's a great deal, guys. And that's for any Interfit products, by the way. All right. So, and again, just to give you guys a little bit of background, you guys know that I do a lot of work with PhotoFlex, right? Interfit makes awesome light modifiers. So before the words even came out of my mouth, Interfit made it really clear you don't have to change who you're working with. We want you to work with the gear that you are happiest with, period. So these are the kind of companies that I want to be involved with. These are the kind of companies that I intend to do business with to be able to bring you guys good information, period. Okay? So, I have seen the Interfit modifiers. I will tell you their little pop-up modifier. I'm not a fan of pop-up modifiers. If you guys watch the unboxing video that I did in my Facebook group, I was blown away by how well that thing locks on. Like, I always thought, because I'd never used one, that those little pop-up modifiers would be flimsy, right? And you'd, stick it over the front ring and it'd just like fall off. Go watch, if you remember my group, go watch the unboxing video. I put that pop-up modifier on that ring and I'm shaking the Honey Badger and that thing does not budge, which to me, I'm sorry, that was extremely impressive because my whole thought process was, well, like if it doesn't have some kind of a lock mount, like the Bowens mount, it's not going to hold. Not the case. So Interfit makes some really, really great light modifiers. Interfit also makes some really awesome LED light setups too. So, but again, they weren't going to mandate that I had to like drop everything and, oh my God, it's all Interfit. No, I'm using, and it's not to say that I won't use more of the gear in the future. I've been very impressed by what I'm learning about the company so far. But this for me was about making good on information that I gave out to people around the world that was pretty much not useful. So, that was the point. So, all right, gang. So listen, I'm coming up on an hour and a half. I talk too much, right? I am going to say one last question here. We'll get this. Germano, would you like to take photos horizontally or verticals for portraits? Which one is better? I'm going to tell you sincerely, it depends. So let me give you a better answer. I was taught as a young photographer, when you're shooting a portrait, a person's vertical. So of course you hold the camera vertical. That's the way I was taught. I subscribe to that pretty much probably 80%, 90% of my career. Okay. Over the last probably 4 to 5 years, as I've been doing more and more and more video, and especially in the last 2 years, where the majority of what I shoot goes into a video, I've started shooting horizontal portraits. And I like it a lot. I think the key is, if I could give you kind of a guideline, because there's no easy answer, right? I think the key is, does it make sense? Does it make sense for the shot to be horizontal? I've found that you can do some very interesting crops, especially if you have an interesting background with horizontal. So my advice to you is, do what makes sense to you emotionally and visually in the picture. Okay. And I know that's not like a clear cut, here's how you do it. It's simple answer, but that's really kind of the truth. And Thomas Palmer, yeah, square works. And actually, today I actually wound up cropping like 6 portraits that I retouched square because they were going on Instagram right away. So it just made more sense to do a square crop. I think that, we're dealing a lot as photographers today with not so much as what's the best way to shoot it as where's it going to go. That dictates how you're going to shoot it. And I hope you understand like that. I talk about that a lot when I talk about profile pictures for social media, right? When you're doing a profile picture for social media, you want I went the wrong way. You want the person looking into the frame or into the page, okay? As opposed to looking the other way where they're going to be looking off the page, stuff like that. And you pretty much want to shoot a square picture. I talk about that in my self-portrait video. You want to shoot a square picture if it's going to be a social media profile because it's either going to be square or round in most cases, rarely ever vertical, right? So I think ultimately that's kind of, how you have to look at it is what is the end use going to be? And, from there, you decide on how you should best do it. Okay. All right, gang. So listen, thank you all. This was a great night. I'm not going to lie. I expected to get blasted by buff people tonight. There were some pretty upset buff people. You can go read the comments. But seriously, thank you all for hanging out. Thank you all for discussion. Interfit, if you are still here, thank you so much for stopping by. Greatly appreciated. Looking forward to talking more about these honey badgers and getting to use them a lot more. They've been a blast so far. So you guys know the drill, all right? We spent the night talking about photography. So I'm going to ask all of you as we close out this year and we start to move into next year to make me a deal. It's a bargain, all right? No other YouTuber is going to ask you this. I'm really, really serious. So we've been here for 90 minutes tonight. I want you to promise me that before next Monday, you are going to spend at least 90 minutes taking pictures. If next Monday comes and it's time to log in for TogChat, but you didn't get to do 90 minutes of shooting this week, I am begging you, don't watch TogChat. I would love to have you here, but I want you to shoot. All of this talk is meaningless. This talk is not why any of us picked up cameras. Okay? Get out there and take pictures, guys. All right? More videos coming out this week. TogChat again next Monday. If you haven't joined my Facebook group yet, please do. And whatever you do, guys, thanks again. And remember these words. Thanks for watching another live episode of TogChat. Now go pick up that camera and shoot something, because your best shot, it's your next shot. So keep learning, keep thinking, and keep shooting. Adios.